Hello everyone and welcome to the BALD Cafe podcast. This is now episode 8 and the BALD Cafe podcast is here to share stories from guys all around the world who have dealt with hair loss, dealt with it very successfully, and it's just out there for guys to listen to. Maybe you're struggling with hair loss, maybe you've just discovered you might be losing your hair, or you might just enjoy us talking about our experiences. Today I am really pleased to introduce Joseph on the podcast. Joseph is coming again, another guy from England. He's 27, and Joseph, welcome to the podcast, welcome.
Hi Harry, how's it going?
I'm fantastic, thank you. In true BALD Cafe style, we're going to get straight into it, Joseph, all right? So we're going to go way back, okay? And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was quite a long time ago now, when you were younger and you first discovered you were going bald. How old were you when you first noticed that your hair was possibly receding?
Yeah, I was about 17 when I started to notice a bit of kind of receding around the corners, and at the time I didn't really think too much into it. I didn't think, oh crap, this is the start of baldness. You know, it's going to happen in no time. I didn't think that much of it then, but I suppose at that time I was school age. I was, last 2 years of school, I was still kind of, as everyone does then, you kind of still kind of work out what you're doing, working on your studies, hanging out with your mates. And I suppose I kind of started realizing something was changing when I saw a picture of myself. And I thought, oh, hang on a minute, like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So yeah, it started around then, yeah. About
17, still in school. So you said you started to see pictures and you thought, oh, my hairline's not quite what it used to be, or it's not a standard hairline. Is that right?
That's it, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and also kind of, as every sort of balding man knows, when you go under bright lights and you kind of go swimming and get your hair wet.
Yeah.
That's when you sort of notice something changing or something's a bit different.
Right. So back then, when you first noticed that something's different, something's up, how did you feel? Did you recognize it as hair loss, or how did you kind of identify it as hair loss?
I suppose I started researching it. I started looking at other people, when you start losing that bit of hair, or the hair at the front of your head goes a bit, in my case, it went a bit kind of wispy. And I kind of, I was looking it up on the internet, and I started to notice other people's hair as well.
Right.
So you kind of become a bit preoccupied with hair in your hair. You start comparing your hair to other people's hair.
Yeah.
And especially at school age, no one's going bald when they're 17 or 18. Everyone's got a full head of hair. So that's when you think, what's going on? Oh,
okay. So yeah, you just become hyper aware of your own hair and comparing it to other people's. And apart from sort of, you said noticed it was wispy and maybe sort of receding backwards, that classic sort of M shape. Did you notice any other sort of signs of hair loss? Maybe, I don't know, when you were washing your hair, was lots of it falling out, or on the pillow, or anything like that? Did you notice those things?
I would probably say mostly on the pillow, like going to bed. I'd kind of see a bit more hair, I suppose. Not so much in the shower or anything like that, but yeah, mostly where I put my head, basically. Yeah.
And when you were, of course, like you said, not many people are going bald whilst they're still in school. Well, not many, but in fact, as we know, there are actually quite a lot. But at the time, you think you're probably the only one. And so did you reach for help? Did you talk to any of your friends or anyone about it? Sort of take me back to how you felt and, back when you first discovered it. And did you, like I said, look for any help at all?
No, not really back then. I mean, I didn't know anyone else like me kind of losing their hair or at least having a hint of losing their hair. I mean, in terms of how I felt, it was horrible, really. at school especially, I didn't get kind of like bad comments like, oh, what's wrong with your hair, or your hair looks stupid or anything like that. But I remember getting kind of like jokey comments saying, oh, where's your your forehead's bigger, and where's your hairline going, and stuff like that. And
yeah,
I don't know, I think back then, in those early stages, you're just a bit sensitive about that. Like, even though these comments were kind of jokey and just to make you laugh, and I did laugh them off, you do take them to heart a bit. I don't know about you, but I was a bit sensitive to those comments at that time. And especially when you're in that process of losing your hair, you do look a bit older. It makes you look a bit older, and when you're in 17, 18, you don't want to look older. You want to look the age that you are. And yeah, I mean, it was bad. It felt bad, yeah. At that time, anyway.
Yeah, no, I think for a lot of teenagers, especially at that time, most teenagers are going through something, whether you think you're overweight or, I don't know, some people have bad skin, acne, and going bald, like you said, is such a thing that you think, at the time, I guess you think it's something that only old people deal with, right? Like granddads and things like that are bald. So for a 17-year-old kid, no, I can imagine it's quite the thing to deal with, especially at that age. Did you go for help other than friends? Like you said, you got the jokey comments and things like that. Did you speak to your parents about it, or anything like that, or like maybe you had some best friends that you sort of mentioned it, or did you just kind of try to put it to the back of your mind, so to speak?
Yeah, I would say I tried to put it to the back of my mind, really. I would say I didn't really talk to my parents about it, but then I do remember parents sort of maybe noticing that it was affecting me, or noticing that I was, I don't know, spending a bit of time looking at my hair, or trying to hide it in some way, or trying to style it in a certain way. And I do remember, my mum and dad trying to say, don't worry about it, it's fine. I mean, my dad's bald.
Right.
We might get onto that, but I suppose I remember a time when I didn't talk to my dad directly about it at all. But I remember there was one time when we were in the car together. I think he probably noticed that I was worrying about it, and he said, "Look, like, try not to worry about it. Like, I went bald when I was young as well." I remember him saying these exact words. He said it was like one of the best things that ever happened to him, going bald.
Oh, really?
And I said, like how could that even possibly be true? At that time, I thought, that doesn't help me at all. I don't know why. Why the hell would you think that?
Yeah.
And it's funny now. It's only now I can honestly say that that is completely true.
Yeah.
I remember him saying, it's a challenge. It's hard to kind of get over it, but it makes you a stronger person. Yeah. Yeah.
No, well, of course we know now that your dad was right, but at the time I can imagine, like you said, it's not so comforting at the time. So I just want to go back. You said there briefly that your parents might notice you sort of fussing about it a bit more, or maybe checking in the mirror. Are those apart from those sort of behavioural changes, did you notice any other things? How did I spoke about before, where I would be in class and I would sit right at the back so no one was behind me. Did you catch yourself doing any other things like that?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it would just be in the front of your mind.
Yeah.
Anything that would just not draw attention to it, basically. Whether that would sitting at the back of the class, not standing under really bright lights, just kind of like moving away from the light, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anything that would just give you a bit of relief from worrying about it.
Yeah.
And that could really be I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but any way that would stop people, or from your own perception, any way that would stop people from potentially judging you. or thinking about it or caring about it. And they obviously didn't really care about it that much, but you think they do.
You do, yeah.
So anything to try and take away that heat, I suppose.
Yeah, anything to try and take away the attention from it. And it's funny, like you mentioned there about, it's when you think about it, it just feels like you're always aware of it. Any sort of normal situation, for some guys it's a windy day or a really sunny day, or like you said, you're going swimming. And I mean, I didn't get to that point, but I can imagine for some people, maybe they go swimming, and if you go under the water, you'll sort your hair out before you come up, because if you go straight up, it'll go back and reveal this big receding hairline, you know.
Exactly.
Just normal situations become difficult because you're just always thinking about this damn hair. So I think good advice from your dad there, really. What other, as the time sort of went on and maybe it got more wispy, or it started to recede more, did you sort of look into any treatments or anything like that? How did you sort of deal with it as time went on?
I would say I did a lot of research. I googled everything about it. How quickly do you lose your hair? How would you hide it potentially? All these kind of things that you think you might do, but actually when it came down to it, I kind of knew in the back of my mind that it's just something I just have to get over, because there's no point in trying to stop it, delay it, hide it. I mean, obviously now it's a bit more publicised, the way that people get hair transplants and stuff, but for me it was never really an option going down that road, or trying supplements, or I didn't even try the Alpacin shampoo or anything like that. I didn't go down that road either. And I think that was because I felt like that would be a bit of a cop-out and a bit of a kind of a delaying of the inevitable, which I didn't really. I understood that ultimately I would get over it, and ultimately I would feel comfortable with it, but I didn't know when that would be. But I didn't want to delay the whole thing. Well,
so that's a really interesting point. Do you think that sort of understanding and that, I suppose I'd call it inner strength, or that confidence that you knew you would get through it, do you think that came from yourself and how you dealt with other situations maybe, or do you think that came from maybe the advice that your dad gave you?
Yeah, probably a bit of both. Like, I think I always knew. My dad is always kind of confident about it. He I've always known him to be bald, and he's never been a shrinking violet. So I suppose inadvertently, I saw him as being confident and out there and not afraid to, say what he thinks. And I think partly I might have got a bit of sort of advice from there. But I think it probably was from that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Thinking about it now.
And so, I guess it's hard to kind of go back to, because it was a while ago, and bring back the emotions. But do you think, so as a few more years have gone on, and you've decided that, you're not going to go for any of the treatments and things like that, what got you to the point where you sort of fully... I mean, at that point, I suppose you're already starting to accept it, right? It's a little bit different to my own situation, where I think I talk about hitting this rock bottom, and it made me take action. It seems like maybe you sort of progressed through it. Do you think that was partly because the balding happened quite slowly and gradually, or and you maybe, I don't know, did you implement other things in your life to sort of focus on and be successful in, and as those became more important to you, sort of the whole worries about hair loss got less and less, or how did it sort of develop as the time went on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say when it developed, so I went to university, and you might see from a picture, but my head, it was really noticeable, my hair loss, and I still didn't. I worried about it, but I didn't really take the action of shaving it all off, even then. So, I suppose because I was still young then, hair loss, and also trying to figure yourself out was kind of intertwined together. So
right, yeah.
me going through university and losing my hair, it was all kind of part of the same kind of process of trying to learn a bit more about yourself, trying to figure out what you want to do, what you want to look like, what you love to do. All these things are kind of put together. So I suppose it was just a bit of a process, and I would say I got to a point after university where I put on a bit of weight. I wasn't confident in how I looked, both with my hair and in general. And I think that reached a point where I kind of decided, right, I'm just going to take a bit more control over everything.
Yeah.
It included, my weight, the hair loss, everything. So it wasn't rock bottom as such, but it was like a control thing. It's like, right, I'm taking control of all of these things, and I'm going to cut my hair shorter than it's ever been. I'm going to educate myself about nutrition and what I should be doing in the gym. All of these things, and that, I got my sort of first full-time job out of university. So it was kind of all of these things came together, where I thought, right, let's just sort of refresh myself and take control of it.
Yeah, nice. It sounds like it was still a sort of, you got to a point, you still got to a certain point where you decided, okay, enough's enough now. And you took action, like you said, in being healthier and a new sort of look. And just going, it's like in the last podcast, Tom talked about this sort of rebranding yourself, and it doesn't necessarily, just because you decide to shave your head and get rid of your hair, doesn't mean that rebranding needs to be a negative thing. It can be a very positive thing. So yeah, I like what you did there. I like that. So you decided that you were going to shave your head. Did you do that yourself, or did you go to the barbers, or how did you decide to do that one?
I would say, in hindsight now, I think I prolonged it by going back to the barbers and saying, eventually, it kind of got shorter and shorter whenever I went to the barbers. And eventually I thought, why am I going there to shave my head and for them to tell me how it should look? So eventually I just did it myself, and it kind of grew. I didn't immediately go, oh, I'll shave it to like 0.5 or something. It was gradual. Like I started about 2, 1, and then it kind of got shorter over time, I suppose.
Yeah. When you were going to the barbers, did they mention anything about your hair, or did you say like, oh, can you style it like this so it looks like I have more hair? Or did they say, we had Andrew on the podcast before, and his barber talked him out of shaving it off. Did they ever talk to you about it like that, or?
No, I actually think they encouraged it. I actually distinctly remember how the barbers, and there was a bald guy that was doing my hair.
Oh yeah.
And he just said, cut it short, like cut it as short, as possible. And he kind of gave me the confidence to go away and do it myself, I think.
Oh, awesome! That's good. And when you first did it, how did you feel? Did you kind of get an immediate sense of relief that it was you dealt with, or did you maybe you didn't like it at first?
I actually did. I thought, well, this wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. In fact, it was great. Like I saw it as almost like just taking control of the situation and just thinking, right, I'm not going to worry about what this looks like. I'm just going to do it. And the sky doesn't fall in when you shave your hair off.
No, you're right.
You actually think, oh, I actually look quite good.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And then you forget all about it after
Literally,
that.
yeah. I think that's a big surprise for a lot of people. They worry for a long, long time. How am I going to look with a shaved head? And I think, honestly, 9 times out of 10, or even more than that, people look great. I think it's a very small minority of people who genuinely maybe don't suit a bald head. I think for so many guys, it's honestly a good look. And I think even for the people who worry about the way they look and they think they don't look good, when in reality, it looks fine. It looks, it looks really good. Down to preference, I guess. But yeah, I mean, like you, I was surprised at how good it looked and the immediate relief I got from it, and I just went on from there. I just built, the ball kept rolling, and I pretty much just forgot about it, you know, after I'd done it, because it was done. I'd done it. It was over, you know?
That's it. Yeah, it's almost just like you've reached a point where, right, I just don't care anymore. You do it, and then it's funny, you do completely forget about it. It's just not a factor anymore in how you think about yourself once it's gone.
Yeah. I'd be interested to know, you know, obviously yourself being, you know, for me, it happened in my mid-20s, right? About to turn 28. For you, you're a lot younger. And there are, like I mentioned to you before, a lot of younger guys. There are actually a surprising amount of younger guys who suffer from, you know, hair loss, or maybe their hair starts to fall out when they are really young. Why do you think, I mean, you mentioned before, you know, kids are kids. You know, kids can be quite cruel. You said you dealt with some comments that are really just meant as harmless fun, but when you're younger, you're not as experienced. You know, those comments can seem really quite nasty, and you're going to take them to heart. You know, why do you think it's so difficult for younger people? I mean, it kind of sounds like an obvious question, but I just really like to get your point of view from it, seeing as you were in that position. Why do you think it's especially so tough for a lot of younger guys?
I think part of it must just be because you would look different. You don't, like when you're younger, you don't necessarily want to look different, but if you sort of shave your hair really short, you are going to look a bit different. You won't look older, but you just will look a bit different. I also think it's quite, I think before you decide to cut your hair short, I think people think you're kind of put in a vulnerable position. Like if you cut your hair short, you're kind of opening yourself up to something. What that is, I don't know, but it's almost like you're just a bit vulnerable because you cut your hair.
You're different.
In actual fact, it's the complete. It's the actual. I think it's the complete opposite. I think when you cut your hair short, it's just. I think it's quite a powerful decision to make,
and it's a powerful statement.
Yeah, it's definitely. And people worry about what you might look like. You might look a bit like a sort of skinhead, but that's never the case. I always think it's just a strong decision, and I think whoever you speak to who have shaved their head, I think they would all do the same thing. Like it takes a bit of strength to do that, but afterwards you just feel like a stronger person.
Definitely.
Really, and you don't really care what other people think.
Definitely. I think as well for younger people, and maybe there's some younger people listening, you know, most teenagers at that point, they're trying to sort of fit into the crowd, and anything that's going to sort of put, you know, make you stand out as not being in the sort of crowd and the popular what's going on. You know, I guess you're going to be fearful of that. But again, I love what you said there about it being a strong, you know, it's a strong, decisive course of action. And I think actually, you know, I've got an upcoming video about this exact point, but I think if you do ever get any negative comments, which is very unlikely, but if you do, maybe it's through understanding, but also chances are it's probably because people see that people will perceive a bald guy and they think, oh, this guy should be insecure, or he should not feel good about himself, right? Because he's bald. And then if other guys or other people see that, oh, this guy who should be insecure, when in fact he's confident and he's successful and getting on with his life, that is when they might feel the need to make a comment, because maybe they have some insecurities that they haven't dealt with, and the only way that they can deal with it is to comment on you and try to bring you down. I think some people even see it as a threat, you know, because it is a confident and strong and brave thing to do, you know. A really, you know, really interesting point. I would also say as well for young people, especially young men, you know, when you're losing your hair, you worry about your attractiveness and the way you look to girls. You know, it's a pretty like classic thing. That's one of the first things you worry about, and actually. On what you said about shaving your hair and making it a powerful thing, you know, you don't need to worry about that. If you're young and a man losing your hair and you cut it short, you don't need to worry about your attractiveness
to girls and women. You really don't, because it's such a powerful thing. You cut it short, and confidence you get from that.
Definitely. People pick up on it, women pick up on it, other guys pick up on it. Like I said, that's maybe why they might feel threatened, and I would totally agree. I would honestly, if you're, confident in other areas of your life, then hair loss, and if you take the decisive action, it shouldn't inhibit you in any way, especially not with women. I agree. Let's talk more about the confidence, because I really like, you sent me a message on Instagram and you said that after deciding to you were gonna forget about the hair loss, you were gonna sort of cut it short and get on with it. You said you felt even more confident than you ever did before. I'd love it if you just talk about that a little bit more, and then maybe sort of give a bit more of your own advice to anyone listening, or anyone who's struggling with going bald or losing their hair.
Yeah, I suppose it comes from, because when I was growing up, I wasn't a very outgoing person, and I'm still a bit of an introvert now. I'm not particularly outgoing, but losing your hair really magnified that. So already you're not particularly outspoken, or maybe not confident with people in groups, and then the losing your hair kind of just makes that feel a bit worse. But when I started sort of cutting my hair really short and then shaving it all off, you kind of, all those kind of feelings of doubt, they kind of just disappear. And I do remember feeling a bit more like, I don't need to worry about how I appear to other people anymore. It's done now. My hair loss is just something that is just part of me. Like, the way I look is just the way I look now. I don't need to worry about it. And really, the lack of confidence is probably is kind of you feeling self-conscious about it and worrying about what people think. And the minute you kind of take that away, that weight is lifted, and then you kind of can go out and feel a bit like you can be more yourself and let your personality come out a bit better, rather than kind of putting it in a shell, which I definitely felt like happened to me when I was growing up.
Yeah, so putting your confidence in sort of, I guess what you're saying is in who you are and what you do, rather than the way you look, right?
Yeah, fantastic. Definitely. That's the definitely
the gist of it. Fantastic. So, I think the other point I want to make as well is, I know there's a lot of young guys who, when their hair loss has started young, they think they're going to be going bald overnight, right? But you said yourself, it wasn't until you were 24, 25 that you sort of decided that you were going to deal with it, because I suppose before then you didn't really need to. It wasn't like you went bald overnight, right?
Yeah, that's it. It didn't happen overnight at all. And it's definitely a journey. Like, overall, it's not a fun experience, but you do have to go through a process, and everyone's process is a bit different depending on what they're doing, their environment, who they're with, all of these things.
Yeah.
And for me, it did take a bit of time just to, realise where I was with it and how to deal with it. I would say that the minute I sort of took control of it, that's when I was about 24. Yeah, that was the turning point. But before then, it was a pretty slow process, and I didn't think, I need to get rid of my hair. But in hindsight, I actually wish I did it much earlier.
Right.
Much earlier, to be honest with you. And I think I prolonged it a bit too long.
Yeah.
And if I was to tell anyone, when do you think I should shave my hair off or cut it short, I would say just as soon as you can, basically.
Yeah. Just
having said that, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I agree. Just as soon as as soon as it started to affect you mentally,
yeah.
Do you need to? No, if you're totally happy with your life and you're not like I spoke about earlier, you're not worrying about it, it's not always on your mind, then no, of course you don't need to shave your head. But if it is affecting your day to day and it's all you can think about and you're worrying about it and things like that, then just get it done sooner rather than later. Just bite the bullet. And yeah, I really think you're not going to have any regrets if you do it. And at the end of the day, it's not it's not shaving your hair at that point. It's not something that can't be undone, right? Because whatever hair you have left can always grow back, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
I would say like before I got to that point, I think I had to feel more comfortable with it in myself. Like I remember a time when I was at work when I was sort of 24, and I made like a self-deprecating joke about my baldness, and it was
right.
like and after I made and people laughed, and I was like, I thought to myself, well, I couldn't make a joke about myself like two years ago about my baldness, but literally
No.
in this moment I've made a joke out of it, and that was the
Yeah.
moment when I thought, oh, I'm actually quite comfortable with this now. You know, I don't.
Yeah.
It's not this big thing that's I'm really sensitive about now. I've got over it, and now I can literally talk about it like it's just this thing that is just part of me, and I don't need to. It's actually kind of funny.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. And I
that
think,
was I can remember that moment really vividly.
you know, you're a prime example of going through that process, you know, however long or short it takes, and coming out the other side, you know, like you said, just makes you a stronger and better person. It doesn't need to be seen as this awful thing, which, don't get me wrong, there is a point where it's going to feel like this awful thing. But going through that process, I really think it's an opportunity for you to grow as an individual, you know, be more confident, discover what's important to you. And like you said, I mean, maybe that's as well. Maybe that's why your dad said to you, you know, going bald was actually one of the best things that happened to him, you know?
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And I think just generally, like, the sooner you feel comfortable in it, the better. And I know it takes time and it's hard, but you'll get there.
You will get there. You will get there. Joseph, any closing words for the listeners out there?
Um, I would probably say just one thing that I didn't do enough or wasn't able to was talk about it to people. Um,
Yeah.
I think if I was able to talk about it more and my experiences and how I felt about it with people or with people who were going through the same thing as me or had done in the past, then that would have made my process go a bit quicker, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead, it took longer than it should have done. And if I could have talked to people before, um, just share my experiences, then I think I would have become more comfortable with it sooner. And if you can do that, then all the better.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. That's really good advice. I think talking about it definitely helps. You know, that's again another reason why I started this. So, you know, we'll put your Instagram in the comment section. Oh, sorry, in the description of YouTube, if that's okay. So if anyone's got any questions for Joseph or just wants to say thank you, you can reach out to him. Of course, you can reach out to me. That's what we're here. That's what I'm here for. What Bold Cafe is here for. You know, and hopefully, you know, our conversation here gives people the confidence to go and talk to someone about it, you know, because they can see that it's, you know, you can get to a point where it's something you can talk about openly and confidently. So Joseph, I really want to thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been a really good episode of the podcast. Can't thank you enough. And yeah, to anyone listening out there, of course, I've got the ebook, which is it's totally free on the website. The link will be down in the description box. You can send me an email. You can direct message me on Instagram if you want to know anything. Any questions, put them in the comment section in YouTube. And Joseph, once again, I want to thank you so much for being on the episode of the podcast. We'll keep in touch. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
cheers, Harry.
Nice one, man.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.